Welcome to Spicer and Company. I'm Sean Spicer.
And I'm Lindsay Keith. Well, we have a big show lined up for you, and we want to start off where we left off last week, talking about FBI misconduct as it relates to former National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn. He's working to clear his name and withdraw his guilty plea after being strong-armed by the FBI.
That's right, but recently unsealed documents expose what many are calling a premeditated trap. But the story goes much further than that. We're going to talk about whether some in the FBI tried to take down the Trump administration, and we're going to check about the people that are responsible for it, whether or not they're going to be brought to justice. We're going to be talking to the second-ranking Republican in the House of Representatives, Congressman Steve Scalise of Louisiana, about just that. Then we're going to ask him about everything that's going on to reopen America. The Senate is returning to Washington this week, but not the House. Why not? And while the White House offered both the House and the Senate those rapid COVID tests, it was an unusual act of bipartisanship where Speaker Pelosi in the House and Senator Mitch McConnell, the leader in the Senate, both said, thank you, but no. Was that a smart move? Well, but first, let's get back to this discussion about Michael Flynn. He was targeted during the investigation into the Russian interference during the 2016 election. The conversation that he had had with the Russian ambassador prior to the election was what it all came down to. And it was during this transition period where he supposedly violated the Logan Act. It's this rarely used statute that's frankly not really intended for the incoming member of an administration like the National Security Advisor, which says that we should American citizens shouldn't be trying to influence American policy with foreign nationals. And Flynn was the incoming National Security Advisor. They clearly knew about all of these conversations. But a document that was just uncovered a few days ago, and we showed you last week, reveals that the FBI went out of its way to try to trap Flynn into lying. These handwritten notes that you're seeing right now expose the FBI's plan. Here's their quote, get him to lie so we can prosecute him or we can get him fired. Now, let's be clear about this. These are law enforcement officials that are trying to corner Flynn, who's the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States, so they can undermine an administration that was just duly elected by the American people. This is just jaw-dropping. But what's even more jaw-dropping is the silence by the mainstream media for this gross miscarriage of justice. And don't just take my word for it. Take a look at this headline of the opinion piece in the New York Sun. Liberal press fails to speak up for its own principles. The article then goes on to say, quote, what rivets our attention at the moment is the silence of the Democrats and liberal papers in respect to what happened to General Flynn. The FBI weaponized their legal resources to engineer a crime against one of the most honorable men in the country. And what do we hear from the left? Crickets. So what should we have done to hold the FBI accountable? That's a question we want to pose to our first guest, the House Minority Whip in Louisiana, Republican Congressman Steve Scalise. Congressman, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you, Sean. How you been?
I'm well, thank you. I hope you're doing well. Let's talk about this for a moment. You referred to some of these folks in the FBI as dirty cops. We've talked a lot about this the last couple of days on the show. It's amazing to me that folks that are charged with law enforcement, here they are going up against the National Security Advisor of the United States. And the question is, what can be done about it now that we know all of what's come to light?
Sean, the first thing that needs to happen is real accountability. And frankly, I think people need to go to jail for what happened. Devin Nunes, my colleague from California, has been beating this drum for years. He started digging in and exposing the fact that you had what we call dirty cops in the FBI. I mean, I love our law enforcement agencies. The FBI is one of the vital agencies to keep our country safe. And yet there were some bad apples over there, and they need to be brought to justice, Sean. If you look at what they did, you identified some of the things they did to entrap General Flynn. They tried to do this, by the way. Comey tried to do this to Donald Trump himself. People inside of the FBI, and it probably went all the way up to the top, that were plotting to undermine the elected president of the United States. That shouldn't happen to anybody from any party, and everybody ought to be outraged, no matter what your affiliation is, that you've got these agencies. This is America. I mean, this might happen in third world nations, and we would decry that. These people need to be held accountable. We know some of the names, by the way. This starts with Strzok and Page. I don't know if it goes all the way up to Comey, but boy, it sure looks like it does when they make reference to the 7th floor. That's the leadership at the FBI. Did it even go higher than that? I don't know. But the Durham investigation has been digging into this as a criminal investigation for a long time, but enough's enough. We know enough now to bring charges. I want to see the Department of Justice start holding people accountable. And frankly, people need to go to jail so that everybody else, by and large, good people at the FBI know that this won't happen again to anybody else.
You know, Congressman, the thing that's interesting is that the Department of Justice and the FBI are run by appointees of this administration. They are appointed by Donald Trump. So why isn't more happening? I mean, why? It's interesting. I get it if it was the other party. But it's to some degree right now, you look and you've got Attorney General Barr, Director Wray, and you're right. Why aren't people being held accountable? What is interesting is you brought this up a minute ago. You said this happened in third world countries. When we were talking to Professor Alan Dershowitz last week, he said it's scary how often this does happen, and that you get a guy like Flynn who pleads guilty, not necessarily because he was guilty, but because you got the pressure of the Justice Department weighing down on you, both financially and, in his case, according to KT McFarland, pressuring his family. I think that this really should worry every American, shouldn't it?
It really should. And like you said, they were going after his son, too, just to extort a guilty plea out of him. I mean, they set forth to get a guilty plea, as they said, to either prosecute him or to get him to resign or get him fired. Why should they care who the president's national security advisor is? Donald Trump was duly elected. And if you were at the FBI, I mean, I'm sure everybody has a preference on who they voted for, but you check your partisanship at the door when you wear that badge, whether you're a cop on the beat or whether you're an FBI agent. You're not supposed to let your personal affiliation interfere with the job you do. And clearly these people did. And that's why it is very frustrating, Sean. This has gone on for too long. I know there's an investigation still going on, the Durham investigation, but we know enough already. I mean, I've seen things both publicly and in some of the classified briefings that are more than enough to bring somebody to trial. And I think the more you pursue that, if the Department of Justice were to go after the people we already know, but abuse their power, I think a lot of them would roll over on people even higher up, because we know it wasn't just a few renegade rogues. There are a few more people that need to be held accountable. And again, it restores the integrity of the entire FBI that has this cloud lingering over its head for years. It's been out there. People see this. While the press isn't covering it, the mainstream press, you are obviously, a lot of people haven't seen just how bad this is, but a lot of people have known something went on within the FBI. The Obama administration let Russia try to interfere with our election, but they were trying, someone in the Obama administration was trying to undermine the candidacy of a president of the United States, a candidate, and Donald Trump, and that shouldn't happen to anybody.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and this is troubling what happened. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. I'd like to ask you to stick around for a moment, bring you back after the break, and talk to you about what's going on to get America moving again.
Be happy to.
All right. Well, when we return, we're going to continue our conversation with Congressman Scalise about whether or not the House should join the Senate and return to Washington. And then later, it's back to the normal barometer. That's right. A couple of researchers have been asking questions to the public about when they'll feel safe about dealing with the coronavirus and going back in public. We're going to share the results of this survey. You are not going to want to miss this. Stay tuned.